Hello, everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, June 3rd. Holland Squallen, Qulis Tuktumik, plus Squamish Okamayo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns about this, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Could I have someone move adoption of the agenda, please? Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So we don't have any delegations or invited presentations today. So we're on to item 4, which is unscheduled public attendance. So if anyone has a matter that's emergent in nature and they wish to have addressed by council before our next regular meeting in 2 weeks, this would be your opportunity to make your case for that. Seeing Tom, yep, go ahead to the podium, and we'll just make sure we get the camera going. So we start by just by stating your name, and then.
And actually, I'm here because I was supposed to meet someone who wanted to speak, and they're running late. So I don't know what she wanted to talk about, but I feel I need to put myself in her place so she can talk to you guys. She's been here before, and it's of an urgent nature. I'm sure she's going to be here in 5 minutes, but I mean, if I can have permission to speak for her, or she can have permission to speak later, like when the time actually comes, and because it's
let's so the process has been evolving. We're trying to make it better, but it focuses everything at the start, so it's not a delay as to why, as to when. So I'll connect with on a break and we'll figure out where the best spot is.
Okay,
if you're okay with that. Okay, thank you. So next we're on to item 5, which is public hearings. And or under public hearings, which we have a development permit. So development permit 590 for 38026 Second Avenue. And we'll give staff a moment to get set up. And when you're ready, take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Development. I'm here tonight to present a development permit application at 38026 Second Avenue. Subject property is located at 38026 Second Avenue in downtown Squamish and is currently developed with a 2-story commercial and office building. Property is zoned downtown commercial C4. The relevant OCP land use designations are summarized on this slide. This DP application seeks to establish the form and character of a 7-story mixed-use building containing 340 square meters of commercial floor area and 39 market rental apartment units. The proposed development has a floor area ratio, or FAR, of 2.8. 7 commercial parking stalls are required. 2 will be provided on site, and cash in lieu for the remaining 5 stalls in the amount of $150,000 will be provided. Bicycle parking stalls are provided on the 1st and 2nd stories of the building. Common outdoor amenity space is provided on the 3rd floor, adjacent to the shared indoor amenity space for the building. The parkade is accessed from the lane between 2nd Avenue and Cleveland Avenue. Commercial space is provided on the ground floor, including space along the mid-block corridor. The initial design of this project consisted of concrete walls along the mid-block connection with seating and opportunities for public art. Given the development to the north is providing commercial space fronting the mid-block connection, staff requested that this project do the same to ensure pedestrian activation of the space. Including the commercial space in this location has resulted in some requested variances to the zoning bylaw. This application is seeking 3 variances to the zoning bylaw: an increase in the maximum height from 20 meters to 21.9 meters, a reduction in the required employment space from 20% of the building's gross floor area to 12.59%, and a reduction in the required off-street residential parking spaces from 39 spaces to 28 spaces. The variances are requested in order to maximize the number of rental units the project can deliver. The height increase allows for an additional 8 units of rental housing. The design ensures that the floor level of the 7th story will not exceed 18 meters above finished grade, which is consistent with the maximum building height endorsed by the District of Squamish Fire Department based on anticipated staffing levels. As previously mentioned, staff requested that employment space be provided along the mid-block connection, similar to the project on the adjacent parcel to the north. To accommodate this request, the area for off-street parking spaces on the ground floor has been reduced. The 2nd story of the building is used for residential parking stalls. However, there is not enough space to accommodate all of the required off-street parking spaces and meet the employment space requirement in the zone. Staff are supportive of the variance requests, given that the residential units will be secured as 100% market rental, while still providing a reasonable amount of employment space and off-street parking. Property is located within walking distance from a number of amenities. It is 200 meters from the downtown transit exchange, approximately 500 meters from a full-service grocery store, and approximately 100 meters from both Stan Clark Park and the commercial businesses on Cleveland Avenue. There is a 2-hour parking regime currently in place along 2nd Avenue, which will help ensure that on-street parking is utilized effectively for businesses. To provide some additional context for the requested height variance to increase the height to 21.9 meters, 1365 Victoria Street, the property to the south with a recently completed development, measures 20 meters in height. The property to the north, where a building is currently under construction, referred to as Amaji 2, has a building height of 21.5 meters. This project took advantage of a 1.5 meter height bonus in the zoning bylaw related to flood construction level that is no longer available for downtown properties. The property to the north of Amaji 2 has an approved development permit, which had a variance to increase the allowable height from 20 meters to 23.2 meters. The building known as Amaji is 20 meters in height and located on the west side of 2nd Avenue, directly across from the subject property. The market rental building known as Ashlew, located on the corner of Victoria Street and 3rd Avenue, received variances to reduce the required employment space from 20% to 9.2% and increase the maximum height from 20 meters to 21.09 meters. This development permit was presented at the November 21st, 2024 ADP meeting. ADP reviewed the project and provided the recommendations shown in this slide. Staff believe the applicant's response to the comment are sufficient and consistent with the DPA 3 guidelines. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development showcase, and a development sign has been posted at the site. Variance notification was delivered to properties within 100 meters. I believe 11 comments were received to date that were not supportive of the variance requests. Given that the proposal meets the DPA 3 and DPA 5 guidelines, staff recommend approval of DP 590 and the requested variances subject to the conditions noted on this slide. This motion also includes that the cash in lieu of the commercial parking stalls be directed to the Alternative Forms of Transportation Fund. And there's also a recommendation to give the housing agreement bylaw 3 readings that is associated with this project. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. And just to situate everyone, we're going to start. We've had a presentation from staff, and proponents and members of the public will be given an opportunity to be heard in respect to council's consideration of this development permit. But first, we're going to go to council for questions and have those answered before we move to that public piece. So just to orient everyone with where we are in our process. So council, any questions for our staff before we go to the public? Councilor Pettingill?
Yeah, just to clarify, is there any below market rental proposed here?
Through the mayor, no, only market rental.
Okay, and then can you explain, because we've been hearing 6 stories is the limit with our given fire department size. We heard near the university that 7 stories was acceptable because there was a hill, and so the elevations worked out to counts at 6 somehow. But this is flat and it's 7. How are we able to do 7 stories here?
Through the mayor, this is somewhat challenging to articulate, but I will do my best. The restriction has to do with the measured height from finished grade and the underside of the uppermost floor being 18 meters above finished grade. So you have 18 meters to the underside of the uppermost floor. It's a requirement in the building code, and that dictates the height that the fire department has the ability to fight fires in currently. So this proposal meets that 18 meters from finished grade to the underside of the uppermost story.
How was it able to do that? Given that others would likely aspiring to do that, is it less per floor? Like, is there a below normal elevation in each journey to get to that seventh floor?
Yes, they're close, but the overall floor heights were adjusted to accommodate this. It was highlighted fairly early on in the process to the applicant, and the architect confirmed that it would meet that requirement.
Okay, and just to continue on this, the sign, in others, we've we've talked about the height of the parking to make sure that it's usable for the types of vehicles that are likely to park there. Was that affected by this sort of trying to get to the seventh story inside of the same, or at least a similar height as the 6-story buildings around?
The parking is high enough to accommodate vehicles on this. I am not an architect, but the other consideration with this is when you exceed that 18 meters above grade with the building code, it kicks you into a non-combustible construction for the entire building, which makes it significantly more expensive and not usually economically viable for projects of this size.
Okay. Councillor Pettingill, sorry, I sort of took your line of yours. That's fine. Other questions on this? Councillor Hamilton?
Thanks. You mentioned a building. Did I hear correctly that there's a building that has a height of 23 meters? Which building is that, or did I hear wrong?
You heard correctly. That is 2 properties to the north of this. That received a variance to 23 meters, but that allowed the elevator, I believe, the elevator and the access onto the rooftop. There's a rooftop patio on that project. So that piece of the building that provided access allowed the building to get to that height.
Okay, thanks. That's an interesting clarification and definition, like a slight nuance in height limitations. When there's an elevator protruding up, it's very different from the entire building coming up. This entire building is coming up to 21.9 meters, correct?
That's correct.
Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, can staff just speak to the or reiterate why they are supporting the now for the decrease in employment space in this building? What's the trade-off there?
Through the mayor, the trade-off here is accommodating a reasonable amount of parking for this space, and really the request for that commercial space along the mid-block connection. The previous iteration had more parking, but no commercial space along that mid-block connection and mezzanine space, which slightly increased the employment space that was provided. The mezzanine space would have been on the 2nd story. So staff are really pushing the applicant to try and provide that commercial space along the mid-block to ensure that that is activated and is good and used by pedestrians. So that resulted in slightly less employment space overall than what was originally proposed, because the mezzanines on the 2nd floor were lost to accommodate more parking spaces because there was less space on the ground floor to provide parking stalls.
Councillor Pettingill?
So would they, in the previous iteration, would they have been at 20% had we not made the sort of request around the mezzanine, or would they still have been under the 20%?
Through the mayor, there was still a variance. I believe it was closer to 14% or less, but it was not at the 20%. There was still a variance required.
Okay, if I can, how are we then ensuring that for the people who are providing homes, we're also ensuring there's employment? I know we can't guarantee a job ahead of time for everyone, but sort of employment space to match the housing so that people don't need a car because they're working locally. If like, what's our thinking there?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure I am grasping your question. Are you speaking to requesting additional rationale for the employment space variance, or the uses permitted in the zone? The C4 zoning is quite permissive with respect to employment uses.
I'm sort of thinking about the reduction, like I understand the reduction helps with the mezzanine and sort of the parking requirements, but another requirement is that I think one of our objectives is to make sure that people who live locally can work locally, so they don't need a car, so then the parking's not an issue. Like these things are all tied together. And so, you know, where is the employment piece in this if it's not here, or how are we thinking about that? Because it seems like it's an important piece of the trade-off that we would expect somewhere else nearby to have the employment.
Through the mayor, so one of the trade-offs here was that this project is proposing 100% market rental. And given the current economic climate for development, it's been noted that it's quite challenging to deliver this. So staff were looking for ways to help accommodate making this project more viable, and that resulted in a reduction in the employment space. And again, staff really did push for that mid-block employment space to get provided, because staff felt that was important to help make it viable or make that plaza space more activated for pedestrians in the future.
Was that your hand? Go ahead, Councillor Starr.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. Appreciate the comparisons on height of surrounding buildings, but do we have any other 7-story buildings? So I appreciate we have other 20-ish plus meter buildings, but do we have any other 7-story buildings?
Thank you for that question. Through the mayor, we have zoned 7 stories on the Plaza at Junction Park building, but none that are constructed today.
Other questions, Councillor? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, I just had a question in the guidelines table that we have. It says that it partially meets the guidelines for overhead weather protection because it's just, it only has it over the entrances and it's not continuous. And I was wondering if staff could comment on that.
Through the mayor, yes, it is partially meeting the guideline because it's providing it over the entrances. That is not uncommon on projects downtown, given that it's built to 0 lot line. So staff were supportive of the overhead weather projections as proposed for this project.
And could you go into the rationale there when you say 0 lot line? So the front of the buildings that they're lot lines. So any coverage that is provided or that we request sort of overhangs onto and complicates our lives in dealing with district property outside of that. Is that why?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, and thank you to my colleague for raising it. I mean, my understanding, and I think our recollection of the discussion we've had, is that we wanted those overhangs so that in a wheelchair or whatever, you could sort of an all weather go along the street. And so we wanted it over our streets. I know there's been a couple of exceptions with trees or something where we've had some concerns, but I thought generally our expectation was continuous overhangs so you could go along the street and stay dry, ideally. Am I misunderstanding the guideline?
Thank you to the mayor. Just to clarify that it is a guideline and not a regulation. So given that the project meets the majority of the development permit guidelines, staff are recommending that council considers it. It's not a regulation, in which case we would require that it be continuous.
Thank you. Other questions, council? I just wanted to touch on the parking requirements here. We know that the downtown parking requirements are quite a bit leaner than as a starting point than the rest of the community. How we've got less, how many apartments are being provided here?
39.
Okay, so we've got 28 spaces. Do we have any insight into how those are, how the parking spots would be allocated or managed, and or any, yeah, just how is this being perceived? I'm I'm trying to remember other instances where we've provided a number that was less than one per unit.
Through the mayor, no, we don't have any information about how the parking will be allocated. That would be up to the building owner to do in the future. One would think that if you are not being provided an off-street parking space, that the rent would not be as high as a unit that would have an off-street parking space, but we don't have any information about how that will be allocated.
Through the mayor, just to add, in our experience with market rental buildings that don't provide one per unit, they do often charge for parking so that it becomes more of a choice as opposed to something that people are required to pay for.
Which effectively achieves a spot with a parking unit is more expensive than just a unit. Did I see a hand on this side? Oh, yeah, Councillor Greenlaw.
I was just wondering, for an apartment with 39 units in it, if it were like a market purchase building, how many parking spots would be required for this building? Because I think quite a few of them are 2 and 3 bedroom units, aren't they?
Through the mayor, that's correct. However, downtown, the parking standard is 1 stall per unit, regardless of bedroom type.
Okay. Any other questions before we go to the public? We'll have another opportunity following public comments to ask some more questions. So we'll do that. We'll do that now. So the proponent members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard in respect to council's consideration of development variance permit number 590, which is for 38026 Second Avenue. The proposed variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2017 are outlined in the development variance permit included as part of the agenda and available on the district's website. Members of the public are reminded that you may only speak to the proposed variances. This can be an interesting thought exercise, but it's the proposed variances that are in consideration here. We're trying to make this a safe space for everyone to voice their opinion without interference from others. Therefore, I ask that members of the public maintain order and quiet during the process. Please do not applaud or interrupt any speech or action of members of council or any other person addressing council. All speakers will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to address council. For all speakers, please start your remarks by clearly stating your name and neighborhood. As is our practice, we hold space for Squamish Nation officials to be first to comment. So I'd like to invite officials from the Squamish Nation to comment on the proposed zoning. I haven't seen anybody here this evening, so we'll move through that piece. We'll move on to the applicant. So I'll now ask the applicant or the representative to comment, after which everyone else will be given the opportunity to speak. Is the applicant here and wish to speak? Okay, on to the public. So now I'll call on any members of the public. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to address council. I'll first call on speakers participating in person. Just please raise your hand to do that. Wait to be recognized and approach the podium. Instructions are available on the district's website for online participants, and there's a moderator who will communicate with people participating online. So now I'll go to the public. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? I see some almost body language, but I don't see any hands up yet. So I'll just check online with our moderator. Is there anyone online? Getting a negative there. So I'll ask again if anyone wishes to speak to the variances requested for this development. Not seeing any. The time for public submissions is now closed. I'll ask council if there are any further information that the planning department might provide in response to any comments or questions raised by members of the public or that weren't resolved in our first session. Okay, go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Process-wise, if we weren't completely comfortable with this, is it preferable that we would vote it down or that we would refer it back to staff with some specifics of things we are concerned about? Or
I'll look to staff for their preference, although they've made a recommendation.
To Through the mayor, that is a bit of a challenging question to answer, given that I am not privy to what council's feedback would be. We have worked a lot with staff, or staff have worked a lot with the applicant on this. And it would likely be challenging to make amendments to this. Yeah, I'm not know they've noted that for this project to be financially viable, this is the proposal that is forward to council right now. So if that is not what council is supportive of, then likely voting it down would be preferable.
Okay. I wondered about this. I'm just having a challenge with the parking piece, and I understand the reason that the lower standard exists for downtown is that these properties are incredibly hard to develop and meet those standards. So I think in this case, I don't know, my rough math has even losing the entirety of the ground floor commercial might not get that parking achieved. So that trade-off I'm interested in, but I just wonder how more broadly how we look at parking across the board. Like, is the downtown standard serving us, and at what point do we look at that sort of versus the one-off? Because I feel like the bigger properties are all done. We're under these smaller sites, so it's only going to get harder. Can staff find any insight into how like the thought process is going in this area in our current context of the housing crisis and so on?
Thank you through the mayor. I will try to answer this. We do consider parking as a one-off. We know parking is the biggest challenge to building housing, and staff acknowledge that there is quite a large housing need. So each application is looked at as an application, but of course in consultation with our transportation team, who can provide more input in terms of future parking strategies and transportation strategies and active transportation strategies in the area. Yeah, it is challenging, but in the face of rising costs to construct housing, staff would recommend when it comes to market rental to consider a lower parking standard given the cost of constructing that parking.
Okay, thank you. Yep, go ahead, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks. Question about our 20-meter height limit. So it's the height variance here that I'm struggling with the most. When a height variance is to allow a slight extra protrusion, to allow, maybe outdoor amenities or facilitate an elevator, that's different from the entire building going up to almost 2 meters above the our current zoning limit. So can you speak, what's the origin of that 20-meter height limit, and what's the value of having a height limit in our zoning? What's the purpose of that zoning limit if it seems as if every application we see is pushing higher and higher above that height limit?
Through the mayor, Jonas Christine, Director of Community Development. The 20-meter height limit, I believe, has been in place for a while, since C4 has been in place. What we need to consider is back when C4 was established, there were no employment space requirements. There was just the requirement that you can't build below the flood construction level any residential space. So what was left after parking on the bottom level became essentially the employment space requirements in C4 buildings. Now, over the last 10 years, we've increased the requirements for employment space downtown, and especially in the C4 zone, without giving that additional height. So we see on smaller properties, especially for market rental projects, but same goes for sale projects as well, is that, at this scale where it's not a lot of units, it's very hard to make the project feasible. Because if we take a floor off of this building, essentially what it means is that you can't build a market rental project. So we're trying to find a line where where the feasibility makes sense for that project.
And this is rhetorical question. This isn't one I expect to be able to have an answer to, but presumably the developer purchased the property knowing the 20-meter height limit with a plan to develop a residential rental building. And so if it's not viable, then I'm struggling to understand the argument that it's not viable to do this with the 20-meter height limit when, you know, it's the developer's choice to purchase the property for the price they purchase it at, and then say it's unviable to do what they wanted to do. So I'm struggling there. I don't know if there's an answer. I don't expect an answer, but that's what I'm struggling with.
I'll try to turn that into a question if I can. Is the tenure the deciding factor? If these are for sale units, they may be able to achieve that, and it's securing the rental tenure is part of that trade-off, or in the pro forma?
From the staff perspective, absolutely. If this was a market for sale project, we wouldn't be here in front of council presenting in this form with a lack of employment space and height. But market rental is a priority. Any housing is now a priority, but market rental and affordable rental especially. So we try to work with the applicants to kind of come up with the most feasible solution, honoring the spirit of that zone.
Okay, Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, just following up on my colleague's comment, the comments about this is feasible or not, that's, I believe, assumes a particular, I would argue, inflated land price. And so by granting various variances in parking and height or whatever, are we not facilitating that inflated land price as opposed to holding fast? I understand that might pose challenges for this, but wouldn't we expect that to put downward pressure on the land prices and then make some of these more viable in general, with more consistent with our parking and height and so on? Like aren't we, if we pursue all these variances, actually facilitating the land expansion price?
If staff wants to comment, they can, although I feel that comments is likely more a philosophical debate with council. But is there any context you want to add to that? So I think that's part of what we're wrestling with here. Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. We sometimes secure rental in the form of a housing agreement, and we sometimes do it through zoning, through residential rental zoning. Why would we choose one over the other? Yeah.
Through the mayor, in this instance, the applicant is volunteering to enter into a housing agreement to secure it as market rental. So staff are using that currently. That's often what we do if we're processing a DP application and having variances to the zoning bylaw. That's the easiest way to secure it. Rental tenure zoning can be applied afterwards to properties that have housing agreements in place, or if there was existing rental on the property, then it could be applied, which was how we initially implemented rental tenure zoning. So in this case, there's no rental tenure requirement in this area of the C4 zone. So staff are using a housing agreement to secure that.
Thank you. And in the conversation, I know what we have before us is this development permit with variances. Was a rezone considered? I don't see too many C4s actually getting across the line in staying within the zone. So what's that line when we're varying the height, we're varying the employment space, we're varying the parking, or we're being asked to, versus rezoning to a CD zone that's might address those issues? Like, how close are we to needing to do a rezone here if we want to change anything from what we see?
Through you, Mayor, it would be likely that if someone was going to go through a rezoning application, that it would not be a market rental project. That obviously just going from development permit and not having to go through a rezoning and then a development permit saves a considerable amount of time and helps with the project's viability. There's also precedent that Ashley Building had a employment space and height variance, as well as an amenity space variance to facilitate that being secured as 100% market rental. So when there's, and the height variance is 1.9 meters, it is a variance to be sure, but not an extreme variance. So staff thought it was reasonable, and particularly when we're able to secure a project as all market rental, there's value in that.
Okay, thank you for that. Council, the questions have started to become for ourselves, so I think we're moving towards tackling the this matter. So we have a recommendation before us. Do you mind pulling the slide up just while we might just help everybody get oriented? It is a lengthy one. Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
How many, and I don't need an exact answer. You might know off the top of your head, you might not. How many buildings in the last, say, 5 years have actually developed within the C4 zoning without a variance?
Through the mayor, there's one building, and that is a building that does not have a development permit. It's on Victoria, the Lauren. It was a building located, it was the only property located outside of any development permit area. And so that building went straight to building permit. It was some kind of a miss in our previous official community plan. And so they kept it to the regulations to avoid, any process that they didn't have to go through. But I think most buildings in the C4 zone require some kind of variance.
No, and this goes to a philosophical question. This is not about this building in particular. Does that speak to our C4 zoning not being appropriate? Or does that speak to the developer always just wanting to eke out as much as they can, that little bit, to push the bound just a little bit? Should we be changing the C4 zoning? Or will developers always just push the bounds for that extra little bit?
Through the mayor, with mixed-use buildings and small properties where, such as downtown, is you will always get some variances, I think, because there's a benefit to the district as well. It provides some leverage to council to secure things like market rental in a project that requires variances. So the C4 zone is not perfect. Because we have adjusted other things like employment space requirements. The flood construction level continues to evolve. And so, it's still not in a perfect state, but it also provides some leverage to the district.
And thank you for pulling up the the recommendation. So it's also in your package, council. So we have the recommendation here. Is there someone that would like to move the staff recommendation or an alternative to the staff recommendation? Yeah, that'll be it. Okay. Councillor Stoner, was that your head?
I will move the staff recommendation.
Councillor French?
The version I see in front of me is not the same as what I see on there. This has 4 pieces to it. That has 5.
So, sorry, the bylaw is elsewhere. So the first 4, and then the 5th one is later in our agenda. So that shouldn't be. It's a recommendation that's adjacent to this, but it's what is being moved here will be the first 4, and we'll address the 5th one at the appropriate point in the. If this is successful, then we'll address that one subsequently in. Sorry, I think it's section 7A1. So.
Okay, and Councillor Stoner was moving the staff recommendation.
The staff recommendation for the first 4.
Second that.
Think you would like to speak to it?
Yes, I will speak to it. Thank you through the chair. Thank you to staff for the presentation and the work on this application. I do think that there are some trade-offs that we are making here, most certainly, and appreciate the comments that have been submitted by the public in terms of the concerns with the variances requested. I do think that all development is a balancing act of trade-offs. And we know that there is a significant need for rental housing in our community. And so I think moving forward with this application that will provide 39 units of market rental housing in our community is important, as well as a number of the other things that we're achieving. I appreciate staff pushing on activating the mid-block connection and achieving the commercial component in this building. And I think that will really help liven this part of downtown. It does mean that we're seeing a reduction in the percentage of employment space downtown, but we also know that the mezzanine levels, which we sometimes count into our employment space, aren't always the most functional in terms of employment space anyhow. And so I think that, to me, that trade-off for activating the mid-block connection is actually more important than achieving that 20% target. I also do hesitate on the addition of the extra floor here. I do think that it is different than some of the other variances that we have granted that allow things like an elevator protruding. This really is an additional 1.9 meters in height, but I think that is what is going to make the market rental component of this project viable. This is a development permit, so there is a timeline on it. If it's not starting construction within 2 years, then it lapses, and there's opportunity to renegotiate that at that time. But I think that there's enough opportunity here to see 39 units actually come to fruition in a 2-year time period, and that is something that we should all be working towards. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor French as a seconder and then over to Councillor Greenlaw.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. And I'm supporting this staff recommendation on this project because I feel that if we're going to do something like this, this location is the place to do it. Downtown is our best served by transit, a transit system that we're working very hard to improve and getting good cooperation from BC Transit in our efforts to do that. And also good cooperation from our new MLA representing us in Victoria. And also, in speaking in favor of the staff recommendation, I'll encourage the landowner and the developer to demolish the existing building in as sustainable a method as possible. There are ways to do it, and I would like for this landowner to show the rest of the world just how well that can be done.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw.
Thanks. Through the chair, I won't be supporting the motion on the floor. I have significant concerns about the suggested parking. I don't think we can afford a further reduction in parking spaces in our downtown core. So many of the emails that I get in general are complaints that there is not sufficient parking downtown already, and that is without the occupation of new builds or the loss of parking from some of the proposed projects downtown. Further to the parking spot reduction, the majority of the parking stalls are marked as small car, which basically means you can't use them with a car seat. When you reduce the width of these spaces, it's really difficult to get a child in and out of your car seat. So I don't think they're very usable, frankly, for families who are moving into this town. And then in addition to that, it has on-street loading spots, which means there will be further pressure to the parking needs. So it's not just a reduction of 11 spaces, which is already quite tight for that development. It's also these other pieces. And then to trade that off for $150,000 to me is just insufficient compensation. And I'm concerned on the height variance, mostly based on the feedback that we've gotten from the public through the mail correspondence. So I won't be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thanks. Unfortunately, I also am not ready to support this. In general, I would be okay with the height and even parking reduction, but I'm not okay with the employment reduction, even at 20%, given the zoning. It's not clear to me that the most typical sort of employment here would be suitable for most of the people moving into the place. And then we, on top of that, have a significant reduction in the employment, and making all these things like rental, even market rental, is important, but there has to be matching employment, and that when we're reducing parking. And I think also the overhangs along the front it's really important. It maybe seem like just one small guideline, but we have such ambitious and necessarily so mode shift goals that something like this can't be just oh, too bad we asked for it, we didn't get it. For me, it's a pretty important piece. And so with in totality, this doesn't get us to where we need to be. And I do think that we are facilitating the land price increases when we give these variants in a place like this. I think we need to send a message that, we expect suitable employment for the housing so that we're not building housing for commuters, so that we're not introducing parking challenges. And I do appreciate the activation of the mid-block connection. I think that's really important too, and it would have been hard to support it without that. So that's a positive here. But for me, I think in particular, the awnings and most of all, the lack of employment space is a deal breaker for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Hamilton?
Thanks very much. I am supportive of a lot of this application. I've got no issue with parking variances. My feelings on parking minimums, I've made them clear. I don't think we should have parking requirements. I think builders should be allowed to do what they want, and owners should be able to, and people, consumers should be able to consume a parking spot if they want. So no problem with that. My issue is with the height variance. I see when we set a height limit, that's what we expect everybody to follow. And if we keep pushing for one reason or another up above that height limit, we're treating each lot case by case, each developer case by case. And to me, the real value in something like a downtown commercial C4 zone is that everybody follows approximately the same rules, give or take a few minor variances here and there. But to consistently see variances requesting height changes is a sign that either we need to change our zoning or developers need to change their expectations of what they build. But continually requesting and granting height variances, I think is something we need to stop doing. And the only way I think we can do that is by saying no to a height variance. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to express appreciation to my colleague, Councillor French, for raising the issue of deconstruction, ethical dismantling approaches to the existing building, and we should take every opportunity to encourage this. We have good contractor resources to address that opportunity locally, and we should be fostering that resource. I'm going to support the staff recommendation, and the main issue for me is the employment space requirement. How that's been it has been dealt with in the mid-block connection. I think that that is important, and in the long run, it'll be probably one of the more important features of this development. We have been speaking broadly about issues relative to the employment space requirement in the C4 zone and to parking. And I hope that we'll continue that dialogue here with staff and ongoing in future. I'm going to take the opportunity to cite some of our correspondence on the issue of parking. I think that there are very important observations have been made. We shouldn't lose sight of them. One letter, we both require our own vehicles because of work and life commitments. Our neighbors have a car because one of them works in Vancouver and a camper. Other neighbors have a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 people living there, each with their own vehicles. Many people in Squamish work in Vancouver or elsewhere in the Lower Mainland or Whistler. Another writer, we need to make our roads safer for bicycle commuters. We need to remove on-street parking, and I do agree with this person that on-street parking is a safety issue for pedestrians and cyclists. So I hope in future we'll address these issues, but here on balance, I'm swayed by what his staff has accomplished with the developer on the mid-block connection. On the matter of height, I hope that there's some better way somehow to produce renderings which can allow us to visualize better the impacts of height. And maybe I'm not finding it in the package, but I would wish to see better illustration on this issue. And I'm not sure what's done elsewhere or from other project proponents, but I find it a little bit difficult, and I would like a little bit more help in visualizing the impacts of height, but that is not an issue that's going to sway me this time around. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. Firstly, our downtown is an incredibly challenging area to work with, both from a landowner's perspective and as those of us sitting here making these decisions. I think the percentage of employment space, I think that that mid-block connection is really, really important. And that space, if it was on a different site, could be employment space. Instead, it's a right-of-way registered on title, which is what part of what's caught up in the third, captured in the third section of this as a subject, along with the no gas covenant. But the covenant requiring, the statutory right-of-way for public access over the mid-block connection area. So we're being prescriptive that we'd like that, and also the orientation of the employment space that is provided. So I think we've added two quite challenging pieces to work with into this overall equation that is our zoning. These mid-block connections, I think, are very important to increase folks' ability to move between our really strange and long shaped blocks we have in our downtown core. So I see quite a lot of value in that, and I appreciate staff's work to ensure that those are stand a chance, the best chance possible of functioning at a high level by aligning the commercial space there as well. And the rental tenure here is I think is really important and makes the other pieces worth considering. And for me, they meet that threshold. We've got the height variance is within I think well reasoned with the rental tenancy and the other restrictions we've put on the site. I don't think it's a massive departure from what has happened broadly around the downtown to ensure things happen, particularly rental units, even market rental units, which we do need. I'd love to see some below market units, but what would have to be given to get to below market in this case would be substantially more. So I'm happy to see that, the rental aspect to me makes that height variance reasonable. And I think that we need to shift overall on parking. So I think this is likely that given that there's a number that's less than one per unit, we'll need to be very upfront with the folks living there, that if you do have those, for whatever reason, if your household requires 3 parking spots, that might not be available to you here. And I think it's important that we start monetizing, or people really understand that parking isn't free and it's something to take into consideration. So right now, at this point, if someone does not require a vehicle, they're likely to still be paying for a parking spot through their arrangements. So I think, and I get that that's not for everybody, but for those folks that is the case, this is an opportunity to not be paying for parking as part of your rent should you not need it. So I'm happy to support. And as was stated earlier, I think it was Councillor Stoner mentioned that a development permit does expire in 2 years. So given that we have such a strong need now for this, and with that time constraint on it to deliver this for the community, I'm happy to support and see this move forward and be turn into some much needed housing for our community. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill, Greenlaw, Hamilton opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much. So I think what I'd like to do now is just to get this over the line, if we could suspend the order of the agenda, just to deal with the, I'm assuming, sorry, I see Mr. Daly's gone. So I'm assuming there's not a presentation on the housing agreement. piece, which is 7A. So I'd like us to go to 7A1. There's no present, it's just securing what we just agreed to in the development permit.
Correct. Happy to answer any questions if there are any, though.
Okay, any questions for staff? Would you like to move the recommendation? I'll second that. If anyone wants to make a comment, go ahead, but yeah, go ahead, Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, I will support this. I did not support the variances, but given that it got council support, it is important that it has a housing agreement to secure this. So I will be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, so next, thank you. So next we have the consent agenda. Is there anybody who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Yeah, Councilor Pettingill?
Just the Lions Bay landslide update. That's 6DI.
6DI, yep. No problem. Anything else? Okay, could I have someone move the consent agenda then, please? With that piece pulled, Councilor Stoner moves, Councilor French seconds, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. We'll deal with the with that in the appropriate spot later in the agenda. I will botch it if I try to say which spot that is, but I know it when we get there. So next we're on to next up is District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw. This is CD 82 rental housing amendments, and I will pass it over to staff.
Mayor?
Yes, hello. Oh, yes, hello.
Hi, I'm going to declare a conflict of interest. I'm a resident of Ross Road. Thank you.
Thank you. We will send you a text when we're done, and we'll take a quick recess after as well, so won't delay me. Okay. So when you're ready, take it away. I know that, there you go.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Abraham, Planning Consultant, presenting on behalf of the Community Development Department. Today, I'm presenting a rezoning application for consideration for first 3 readings. The application is for the Chikai River Development CD 82 zoning to increase the allowable density on Parcel E North to facilitate the development of 180 market rental units and commercial space. The Chikai River development is located on the Chikai Fan debris flow area in Brackendale on Ross Road and will be a mixed-use neighborhood that is currently zoned for 1,215 homes and neighborhood commercial. Parcel E North, which pertains to this rezoning application, is outlined in red on the map shown here. The Chikai River Comprehensive Development CD 82 zone was considered by Council and adopted in June 2024 last year. In April 2025 of this year, a rezoning was adopted to revise Parcel E and F lot boundaries and allow creation of Parcel E North and Parcel E South. There is an existing land development agreement registered on title that secures community amenities that must be delivered as part of the development as a whole. The LDA secures neighborhood commercial space, 85 non-market rental and 85 market rental housing units. These units are currently contemplated on Parcel E South, shown in blue here. The proposed 180 market rental would be in addition to these already committed rental and affordable rental and would be located on Parcel E North, shown in red. For further clarity, the revised CD 82 zone will secure rental tenure for all 180 housing units. No new for sale units are proposed on Parcel E North or on the Chikai development site as a whole, and therefore the proposal does not trigger the district's community amenity contribution policy. In addition, there are no zoning changes proposed to Parcel E South. So as part of this rezoning application, the applicant was required to complete the following assessments. An updated traffic impact assessment was required and received and approved by staff. It's attachment 2 of the report. The assessment noted a 13% increase in potential traffic compared to the previous report. The engineer noted slightly longer queues and higher volume to capacity ratios and concluded that the road network still has sufficient capacity to accommodate the additional trips. Water and sewer assessment was also required as part of this rezoning application. So there were offsite upgrades recommended in the original 2023 water and sanitary servicing report, which must be designed and constructed by the developer at the developer's cost. The offsite upgrades must be constructed and achieve completion prior to unit occupancy, as outlined in a new and updated sanitary upgrade sensitivity analysis report dated March 25th, 2025. Lastly, an updated landslide and flood assurance statement was required as part of this rezoning application, which assessed the increased total number of units on the Chigai development as a whole. This was received and approved by staff and will be registered on title prior to adoption. To accommodate the zoning amendment, the application requires revisions to the LDA, including the following: increasing the maximum permitted number of housing units in the Chigai development from 1,215 to 1,395 units. Note that market rental units do not require CACs as per policy. As such, no new ones are generated as part of this application. Second, there'll be replacement of Schedule D with the updated development plan showing Parcel E North and Parcel E South. Third, to clarify, the existing secured 85 rental units are located on Parcel E South. And lastly, a reference to the Chikai River Development Sanitary Upgrade Sensitivity Analysis, which is the most recent and updated sanitary report. The amended LDA was included as attachment 4 to the council report. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development review map and 2 development signs were posted at the site. A voluntary developer-led information meeting was held on February 5th at the Brackendale Art Gallery. Approximately 30 members of the public attended. At the meeting, the developer presented the Ross Road designs, including proposed street, sidewalk, multi-use path cross-sections, in addition to the proposed rezoning for Parcel E North. 20 public comments were received. Attached to the report is attachment 3. The main public comments focused on the Ross Road design, including sidewalk and multi-use path location, drainage, and removal of trees from yards. Most relevant to the proposed rezoning application included concerns about increased traffic. Staff also referred the application to Squamish Nation, the school district, and the neighboring church. The church expressed general support for the project, including new neighborhood commercial uses, and voiced concerns around road access impacts and parking on property during construction. No other comments were received. As per legislative requirements, an advertisement was placed in the Squamish Chief. In accordance with the new provincial housing legislation, local governments are now prohibited from holding public hearings related to rezoning applications for developments that are primarily residential and are consistent with the OCP. This proposal meets these criteria. So financial implications: the district is contractually obligated through an agreement with the province of BC to contribute annually $300 per unit to a reserve that's restricted as per the terms of the agreement for every building permit that's issued to any units beyond the existing 1,215 units that were approved during the original rezoning. If council supports a rezoning to add the proposed 180 additional residential units, the financial impact to the district is a maximum of $54,000, which will be funded through local area service taxation, general property taxation, or a combination of both. During the 2026-2030 financial planning process, staff will be bringing forth options for council consideration. In addition, if the rezoning is successful and the project proceeds, standard fees apply, including development permit, servicing agreement, building permit, and DCC charges will be levied, and any legal fees associated with the application will be the responsibility of the applicant. Staff recommend that the District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw number 2200 Amendment Bylaw 3141 be given first, second, and third readings, and that prior to adoption, the LDA amendment be executed and registration of an updated flood covenant is registered on title. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also, questions Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
So just to be clear, the area that's proposed, it's just residential and commercial, no industrial?
Correct, just residential and neighborhood commercial.
And to clarify with this, is the expectation of no gas on residential and commercial, or is it just residential?
Through the mayor, the no gas covenant would be on the residential, and commercial would have to comply with the building bylaw of the day and the EL4 energy step code. Sorry, that no carbon step code.
Okay, and if I wasn't pleased with that and I wanted to propose an amendment for no gas on all uses in this area, given that there's no industrial, that would be just something to do as part of the motion?
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. This is a question about the LDA. In the definitions in section 3D of the LDA, talks about a central transit node. Give you a second to catch up there, to get to there. And it says transportation infrastructure improvements located within the neighborhood commercial area, including 2 level 3 EV stations, 10 bike spaces, capable of charging bicycles, a bus station designed to the district's satisfaction, and 1 car share vehicle. And it says final alignment and locations of the central transit node improvements will be finalized prior to the development permit approval for parcel E. I recognize we're not at development permit approval stage right now. When I dig into the architectural drawings, which are in the appendix, there is no space, there's no indication of consideration of a bus station. So maybe I'm misunderstanding what a bus station is, or maybe there was an oversight. But could you speak to whether there's going to be a bus station on this parcel? It seemed very logical to me that there would be some significant transit infrastructure given its proximity to the middle school.
Could you direct us again to the section that you're referring to, or the page in our agenda, ideally?
So it's in, so it's in section 3D of the LDA, which is, because I'm flipping back and forth, I lost the page number. Page 214 of 496.
Through the mayor, can we just get the question again quickly?
I think it was essentially how are we going to secure this? It seemed to be from Councillor Hamilton. Sorry, I'm putting words in your mouth, Councillor Hamilton, but that it didn't seem to appear on the site, but that was sort of the expected spot. So how do we ensure this still happens, and at what point?
Okay. Are we still putting in a bus station?
Thank you, through the mayor. These drawings at this point are still zoning level drawings, are a bit farther ahead than you typically see. We would require it at development permit. No development permit application has been made at this time for the site, given that it's still in rezoning. It's in the land development agreement, so they wouldn't be able to move forward without the items as listed.
So one of the things I'm a little bit concerned about is my interpretation of the word bus station. I have a vision in my mind about what a bus station is, and it may be a lot larger than what was originally interpreted. Are there any more specifics on what that means in a bus station designed to the district's satisfaction? Is there any more clarification on what that means?
Through the chair, I'm somebody who was at the table when we were negotiating the land development agreement. The bus station is going to be determined at the point where we get to that point. I believe during the LDA negotiations, it was a bus stop. Bus stop, yes.
But the LDA says bus station. Is that a typo, or is there some definition of bus station? It is a bus stop, not a bus station.
That is my understanding. We don't have our transportation staff here, so we can't clarify it. But it is not something that we need to address until we get to the development permitting stage.
I just, and part of the language there is designed to the district satisfaction. So it'd be great to understand what that is, although it's not in question as part of this, but I understand why it's come up as part of this. We're looking at the LDA. Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the changes are only proposed to parcel E North for this resolution, or parcel E North and South?
Through the chair, the changes just proposed for parcel E North.
Okay, and the employment, is that exclusively in parcel E North, or is that there's also employment in parcel E South, but it's not being changed?
Through the chair, there's also employment in parcel E South and additional commercial space being provided in parcel E North as part of this rezoning.
Okay, Council, I feel like we don't have a lot of other questions here. So, Councilor Greenlaw.
Thanks. Through the chair, quite a number of the correspondence that we've received from the public have concerns about the multi-use pathway being on the west side of the street and safety concerns saying that it would be better to be on the east side of the street. And I was wondering if staff could speak to the viability of that and the possibility of it happening. Thanks.
Through the chair, staff are currently trying to resolve the Ross Road designs through the servicing agreement, and so I don't have a response for that at this time.
I think we might.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Dave Merrow, Director of Development Engineering. At the public information meeting, we heard loud and clear the concerns from the residents, and we actually worked with the developer to swap the multi-use path to the other side of the road. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so Council, we have a recommendation before us. Are you moving that, Councilor Pettingill?
With slight adjustment.
Try it out.
So move the recommendation with an additional 2C, registration of a no gas covenant for all uses for parcel E North.
Sorry, is there a seconder for that? Councilor French, you second. You want to speak to it, Councilor Pettingill?
Yeah, debated this a bit. I think a no gas covenant for all uses, including commercial, is important. It's the way we are going. I did have some inclination just make it parcel E, but recognizing that the changes proposed here are just for parcel E North, I'm, not sure this is the way I want to go, but I'm restricting it to parcel E North because that's where the changes are. So,
Councilor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. This is consistent with what we have been doing, and I think consistent with what the province is looking for from us. So, yeah, I fully support this.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Anderson.
I will support the Councillor Pettingill's resolution, but I'd like to speak to energy systems. I think that I was in a seminar with one of the vendor for the school district right next door has a biomass heating system. It's a district energy system, and they have a boiler there. It's working very well. And the vendor in a webinar pointed out that this neighborhood would be an excellent opportunity to expand that type of system. We really need to help our Fire Smart program and our way that we deal with wood waste. And this is an excellent opportunity. And that is so to promote district heating as an option. I think when we speak about energy systems, we need to look beyond gas, no gas. There's other options and scenarios and considerations to make. My colleague also mentioned or brought up the issue of industrial land. Right across the road, there's 18 acres under the same ownership, the same management team, right across the road on the west side of government, west of the intersection of Ross Road and Government. That is slated in our OCP for industrial. I think it has the same designation as our business park, if I'm not mistaken. And this is also a future consideration also for energy systems. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks. I'll be supporting the motion. This is the full motion, not the amendment, or are we just on the amendment?
The new language was part of the main motion. So go ahead.
Oh yeah, right. Sorry. Thank you. Paying attention to something else here. Yeah, supportive of the rezoning. I think that it's that this neighborhood is going to get higher density. I suspect we'll see more of these rezonings requesting more density in this area. And this is an opportunity for us to do it right the first time, I guess, but it's doing it right for now. We know how hard it is to evolve a neighborhood from low density to high density. That's a very difficult process. We have an opportunity right now with greenfield sites to densify more. As long as we put in the proper infrastructure, we can have it be a more transit friendly and active transportation friendly place to be. My only reservation in supporting this is what I brought up, this notion of a bus station versus a bus shelter. I have not seen anywhere in the plans a really clear plan to put in transit infrastructure in this part of the community. And when I look to I just looked up our transportation master plan, and I don't see a lot there, because right now there aren't a lot of houses there. So maybe that wasn't a focus of our transportation master plan. But I suspect in the coming 5 to 10 years, we're going to need a significant increase in the bus facilities coming in and out of that area. I can see this being the next northerly node. And I think this is our opportunity to secure a bus station as is described in the LDA. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Greenlaw? No? Councillor Pettingill, do you want to speak?
Yeah, sorry. Some thoughts I didn't get at the first time. I also want to recognize that this is we're pretty far along a very long process. This has enabled the construction of the Chikai debris flow barrier, which is protecting a lot of Squamish. And so it's important that we keep this in our mind. Squamish Nation is heavily involved in this project, although it's being sort of run by a private developer in partnership. But I've seen a lot of shared values. It's an interesting project because we are working with something that is old, and our relationship has changed, and both of our goals have changed. I think they're actually quite aligned, but now we're trying to sort of reopen and collaboratively improve this where we can. And here we see a lot of market rental, which is important. And notwithstanding the last discussion we had, I think it makes a lot of sense here with an increase in employment. And so there's definitely some trade-offs here, but all things considered, I think this makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaking in support of the motion, I think and thank you for bringing up the time span that's lapsed here since this started. It's a big, complicated project to get to this point. And I've often thought that there could be more. And this was what was originally there and approved was a lot for the day, but the times we've been evolving, and we understand our community needs better. And I'm happy to support this increase in market rental in this area. This whole precinct is going to change dramatically, and I think is going to be a wonderful addition to the community. So I'm happy to see some more market rentals here, as well as the employment space. And Yeah, happy to support. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We're going to take a quick, just a quick recess to stretch. We've been at it for almost an hour and a half now. So, so we'll recess, and we'll come back at 7:30. And then, so if the staff, and we'll start with the upper Finch piece. So if staff wants to load up their presentation or do anything that way in preparation, they're welcome to. But we'll be we'll be back at 7:30. We're in recess. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We're on to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw, number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw, number 3174, 2025, and this is for Upper Finch. I will pass it over to staff to run us through the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Development. I will now be presenting a rezoning and land development agreement amendment for the project known as Upper Finch Drive. In July 2022, Council adopted bylaw 2811, which rezoned the subject property from RS1 to CD 101. The CD 101 zone permitted 20 duplexes, 18 townhomes, and 194 apartment units in 4 apartment buildings. A density bonus was included to allow for 15 additional apartment units, provided they were secured as market rental housing in perpetuity. In July 2023, Council approved amendments to the original LDA associated with the rezoning application. These amendments related to the timing of donated apartment units to the Squamish Community Housing Society, increasing the number of affordable and market rental units being provided, and the timing of the construction of the Finch Drive to Loggers Lane multi-use path. The applicant has completed all necessary form and character development permits for the proposed development. Occupancy permits for the 20 duplexes were issued in early 2025. Occupancy for the 18 townhomes and 44-unit affordable and market rental AP1 apartment building should be obtained in the coming months. A servicing agreement for the construction of the extension of Finch Drive, which provided access to the upper portion of the site, was issued in 2020. Part of the original approved design included stormwater infrastructure, draining stormwater from the upper portion of the site, down the new section of road and into a storm detention pond on 39180 Finch Place. During the previous LDA amendment discussion, it was agreed that the applicant could construct a portion of the AP1 rental building above the stormwater right-of-way on 39180 Finch Place, provided there was sufficient clearance to ensure future maintenance of this infrastructure. This allowed an additional 10 market rental units being included in the AP1 apartment building. Prior to the building permit being issued for this apartment building, engineering and public works staff identified concerns with the revised design approach and requested the applicant to redesign the storm infrastructure so that there was capacity for stormwater storage on the upper portion of the site and such that the stormwater infrastructure in the new road could connect to future storm infrastructure in Finch Drive. The revision aligned the stormwater management approach with the current bylaw requirements and eliminated the need for public works staff and equipment to access the stormwater infrastructure on private property. The applicant agreed and redesigned the stormwater infrastructure as requested. This resulted in significant costs related to civil redesign and delays in issuance of the building permit for the AP1 apartment building. To help offset the costs related to the redesign, the applicant has requested amendments to the land development agreement. To maintain as many of the previous LDA commitments as possible, staff support a limited increase in the number of permitted apartment units with no additional community amenity contribution. The 2-hectare property is located at the top of the new eastern extension of Finch Drive and is adjacent to 20 duplexes and 18 townhomes that are currently under construction. Bylaw 3174 proposes to amend the CD 101 zone to increase the permitted number of apartment dwelling units by 16 from 204 to 224 and increase the allowable floor area associated with the residential use from 19,422 square meters to 20,810 square meters to account for the additional units. The density bonus section, which allows the additional units, has been deleted as they have been secured through rental housing, The density bonus section, which allows additional units if they are secured as rental housing, will be removed from the zone, given that this bonus has already been utilized to add 10 market rental units to the AP1 apartment building. To reflect this, the rental tenure use requirement will be increased from 32 units to 44 units to reflect the final number of rental units proposed in the development. Finally, the off-street parking requirements for the apartment units will be amended to note the total number of spaces and visitor spaces required for this development, as opposed to having a requirement per bedroom type. The applicant is proposing 261 spaces for 224 apartment units and an additional 35 visitor parking spaces associated with this use. The applicant has confirmed that they can accommodate an additional 8 units in each of the AP3 and AP4 apartment buildings. Both buildings would meet the maximum height and other zoning metrics related to siting. No changes are proposed for the parking arrangement in the development. However, there are no additional parking spaces for the 16 additional units. The applicant is unable to increase the number of parking spaces provided in the 2 parkades for these apartment buildings, given the significant costs associated with blasting, retaining, and pouring additional concrete for a larger parkade. AP3 would provide 82 residential and 11 visitor parking spaces for 69 units, while AP4 would provide 83 residential and 12 visitor parking spaces for 70 units. Staff are supportive of adding the additional units without adding additional parking spaces, given that there is more than 1 space provided per unit. An amenity package was proposed by the developer as part of the original rezoning application and was secured in the amended LDA approved by council in 2023. The applicant has requested that the timing of the unit donation to the Squamish Housing Society be pushed from the AP2 apartment building to the AP4 apartment building. The AP4 apartment building will be the final building constructed on the site. This request will assist the applicant to meet future current and financial obligations related to the project. Staff have discussed this proposal with the Housing Society and they were not opposed to it. Staff are supportive of this LDA amendment, recognizing the unanticipated costs associated with the civil redesign. The next proposed LDA amendment relates to the number and size of the affordable housing, The next amendment is related to the construction of the Finch Drive to Loggers Lane multi-use path. The applicants are proposing to provide cash in lieu for this work rather than be required to construct the path. The applicant has completed a design for this work and based off the cost estimate has offered $170,000 in cash contribution to cover the paving and materials for the multi-use path. The applicant has offered to pay this amount before the end of 2026 or once the multi-use path construction begins, whichever is sooner. Given the impact of the Eagle Mountain Pipeline project will have on Finch Drive and the uncertainty regarding the timing of this project and the construction timelines of the Upper Finch project, staff support this proposed amendment. And the final amendment to the land development agreement proposes to remove the requirement of the construction of the multi-use path and shelter at the Squamish Legacy Park, and instead focus all of those funds for these improvements to the construction of the ski jump. The applicants have started construction of the ski jump for the Sea to Sky Nordics Club, who are the managers and crown leaseholders for the Legacy Park. As construction of the ski jump progressed, the scope of the project increased from what was originally envisioned. At present, a ski jump exists, however, it was not completed and the funds required to complete this jump would exceed what was originally allocated for this commitment. Sea to Sky Nordics has indicated their preference would be to forego construction of the multi-use path and shelter and complete the construction of the ski jump. There's an existing pavilion with a covered shelter on site that is well used and an existing gravel path throughout the site that is in good condition. Staff support this amendment as it will ensure the construction or the completion of the ski jump to the satisfaction of Sea to Sky Nordics. Notifications have been sent in accordance with the Local Government Act prior to consideration of first reading. Any feedback received from the public will be included on the agenda. In accordance with the new provincial housing legislation, local governments are now prohibited from holding public hearings related to rezoning applications for developments that are primarily residential and are consistent with the OCP. This proposal meets this criteria, therefore a public hearing is prohibited. So staff are recommending first 3 readings for bylaw 3174. And prior to adoption, the land development amendments be executed as noted on this slide. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. Very supportive of the increased units that they're looking to put in. And I don't have an issue with the reduction or the non-increase in the amount of parking. I'm interested in the active transportation path. I looked back at the projects that we've recently executed. The sidewalk on Perth Drive, 1.7 kilometers of sidewalk for 1.1 million. Depot Road, active transportation budgeted 1.5 million for 800 meters. Highlands Way South, 1.2 meters for $1.2 million for a few hundred meters. I know there was some water infrastructure there, so that might not be quite equivalent. So I'm concerned that the $170,000 cash in lieu of the actual completion of the project may leave us quite short. Is there any assurance? Is there any way we can be assured that we'll be able to do it for $170,000 when the time comes?
Through the mayor. This project is slightly complicated, as Mr. Daly mentioned, with the gas pipeline that's going to be constructed in the road and the large stormwater main that the district is also installing in the road. Once those works are completed, the plan is to rebuild Finch Drive as a new road. That'll include curb gutter sidewalk, potentially retaining the ditches, in some cases maybe filling them in. So this cost estimate, my understanding is that it is essentially solely for the asphalt paving. The other curb, the stormwater infrastructure, that's all being taken care of through the larger road project and stormwater main project. So I believe, and I'm not intimately familiar with the other projects that you quoted from a cost perspective, but I know at least a few of them also included the curbing, the gutters, catch basins, things like that. Whereas this cost estimate, my understanding is solely the asphalt paving.
Yep, go ahead.
So this is an amendment to the original agreement. What was the context of the original agreement for them to do? Was it just the asphalt paving, or what are we amending here? Yeah.
Through the mayor. So my understanding was when this agreement was originally made, and Mr. Daly can supplement my answer if he has any more information, is that at that time, there was no contemplation of stormwater works. There was no contemplation of a full rebuild of the road. So my understanding is at that time, it was contemplated that it would be basically a widened asphalt paved shoulder. Similar in context, there'd likely be a lot more grading work to be done. There'd be some ditching to be done. So the scope of work would be larger because you'd have to essentially build this new infrastructure and tie it into the existing infrastructure. So the context is quite different because of this new work that's being done through Fortis and the stormwater main and the road rebuild on Finch.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I'm seeking some clarity on how we ended up here. So we approved an LDA amendment in 2023 with a staff recommendation that enabled some additional density with a creative solution for the stormwater. And now what I get is that there had to be a redesign of the stormwater system. So how did that happen after the agreement of the LAA? And why did that not come back to council given the cost that was incurred? And we're now being asked to change the other amenities in order to account for the additional cost that was incurred by the developer.
Through the mayor, perhaps I will take an initial stab at answering this and then pass it to you, Dave. So initially, staff collaborated with other internal departments to come up with a proposal that would allow them to build this infrastructure above a right-of-way, and agreements were made that gave a level of comfort to the staff at that time. So staff proceeded with the LDA amendment and the DP design accordingly. Subsequently to that, some time had passed and other staff were involved in positions and identified their level of discomfort with that design and not being totally comfortable with the agreements that we had come up with. So the request was made to redesign the storm so that this creative solution was no longer required. And now we are here today. So I will pass it to Mr. Garrow.
Thank you. Through the mayor. I guess I would add, as Mr. Daly mentioned, it was a unique request to have these additional units in that apartment building and have those built over top of a piece of infrastructure that ultimately the district would own. It was complicated by the fact that access to what was originally contemplated to be a district maintained and owned stormwater management pond would have to go through a breezeway essentially. So there was a lot of technical assessment and analysis done on the different alternatives to manage the stormwater from the site. And it all hinged on the fact that the original design that was approved essentially collected all of the stormwater from the upper parcels and the lower parcels into this one stormwater management pond that was located on the lower private development parcel. With the introduction of the stormwater main in Finch Drive, that added another layer of complexity in that instead of the stormwater, getting into the technical details somewhat here, I'm trying to keep it relatively straightforward, but stormwater that was generated on the private development sites at the top of the hill, instead of it being released into the district road, district infrastructure, transmitted down the road, and then discharged into a stormwater management pond on a private parcel underneath a building, it was through a bunch of analysis and coordination between multiple departments of the district, it was determined that the better approach that would introduce much less risk for the district would be to ultimately disconnect from that stormwater management pond and infrastructure within the development parcel at the bottom of the hill and connect all of that storm infrastructure coming down the hill to this future Finch stormwater pipe. So with all that said, it was a lot of collaboration and coordination between staff and looking at different alternatives, because this original solution that was originally contemplated was still quite outside of the box from an engineering perspective. And the decision was ultimately made from a technical perspective to reduce risk for the district, to minimize maintenance challenges and maintenance costs, and ultimately, I think, provide a better solution for the district as a whole for the engineering component.
All right, I will mull on that a little bit. I appreciate it's a really technical decision. I feel like I'm really challenged by the agreement that was passed from an LDA perspective at this council table with a prioritization of trying to get more rental and more affordable as quickly as possible to market, to then be here and that affordable and that rental is just coming to market, and we're now being asked to push off a number of those affordable units that are going to were intentionally meant to be delivered to the housing society when this first came to council in the community in the first phase, and is now being pushed off to the last phase. So it's interesting how this has evolved. I'm just wrestling with that a little bit in terms of where we're at in this stage. Going back to Councillor Hamilton's questions around the multi-use path, the original rezoning application had an estimate cost of about $420,000 was what the multi-use path was estimated at in terms of valuation for that critical amenity contribution. We know that costs of delivering those projects are higher after the fact, both with cost inflation as well as for us to do it. It just costs more. And so I'm curious why we would be accepting $170,000 when we know that the 2022 value was $470,000.
Through the mayor, that original estimate was prior to understanding the scope of the work that was going to go into Finch Drive. So the applicant has come forward with the portion, as previously mentioned, the cost estimate related to the paving of the asphalt, the length of that section, noting that a lot of the other works are going to be covered by that project that's going down Finch.
And can staff remind me how we plan on paying for the other work? So is that being recovered through DCCs? Is that something that Fortis is paying for? How do we plan, and what timeline do we have in our financial plan to be paying for that work?
Through the mayor, I don't have that information for you. That project is being managed through the capital projects department. I do know that we're coordinating work with them. So I can tell you that it's not the road works themselves are not a DCC project. But I can't speak to the funding sources for that remaining work.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, given that last response, maybe there's not an answer tonight for this, but it feels important to me. We've heard, we sort of reanalyze some things we had asked for a different approach because to maintain or reduce our complexity or risk. But we've also heard that the Fortis pipeline under our road introduces a lot of additional complexity and risk possibly to this project. The CSA guidance standards suggest you shouldn't be putting a pipeline under a road. And so are we the ones that have driven that and accepted that extra complexity there, which is maybe also driving complexity in that project? Or is that Fortis that is mandating the location of that pipe under our road right now?
Through the mayor, I do not have the answer to that question.
I understand why that question is coming up in this context. We're talking about tying into the stormwater that's in the same, that will share or at least operate in some adjacent space. But we don't have it doesn't sound like we have the expertise in the room on that particular question. Do you want to, I'll go back to you for.
Yeah, just the other piece, again, I want to make sure that we're being somewhat consistent or fair if we're sort of forcing one developer, asking one developer to change things to reduce our complexity and risk, but then almost in the same or related project, accepting or asking for Fortis for a bunch for some reason. I just want to be clear that it is Fortis driving this, not us, so that we are sort of dealing with both of these issues in a fair and consistent way.
Okay. Do you have any, thank you for that clarity. We don't have, okay, we're not going to, that's as far as we're going to get with that at this juncture. Is any other questions here? I appreciate what's sort of the story of how we got here, and I'm trying to understand both as a similar to Councillor Stoner's line of questioning, I'd like to know where we went. Like, did we go to too high? We approved something that ultimately wasn't buildable, or it wasn't our preferred option to be built. And I wonder, were we going to if staff has a reflection, were we going to too high a level of detail at the stage that we were in that committed us to a path, or is this just the complexity of working with complex things? I'm trying to take a lesson away that if there's anything that we can that we can learn from this, either at this table or from a staff perspective. I know sometimes we want DP level details at a rezone or require things that might ultimately not be in our interest. So just anything there that you could share with us?
Through you, Mayor, I think staff are all looking for a creative solution that to try and move this project forward that had a lot of things that the district was looking for, with being a number of market rental and affordable rental units. So a creative solution was proposed, and staff attempted to move forward working with that. Given the complexities of the engineering design, and as that further fleshed out, it proved to be more challenging than originally contemplated. So we are here today.
Okay, no, that's fine. Okay, any other questions, Council? Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, so I understand staff can't answer who's driving the pipeline location right now, but can staff clarify, because I think I heard an inference that regardless of who's driving it, the location of that pipeline is also complicating this issue or has been a factor. Was I correct in understanding that, or these are completely unrelated and it really doesn't matter, wouldn't matter? This issue is completely distinct from that.
Through the mayor, I would say it's distinct. It wouldn't be solely the pipeline. It's combination of the pipeline having to be installed and the stormwater pipe having to be installed. That is it makes more sense to delay the road work until that work is done. But as far as the alignment of the storm main, it's not impacting the ability to construct the multi-use path.
Councillor French, was that your end? Yeah. You're going to move the staff recommendation. Seconder for the staff recommendation. Councillor Anderson seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Herford. This decision is one I see as a classic case of a big complex project evolving. Looked great on paper in the early days. And when we got into the ground, some transformation was needed once construction got underway. And the transformation is needed based on challenges I would expect and hope that few could have predicted in the early stages when it was looking good on paper. And it is interesting how this has evolved. It's somewhat disappointing. And I'm trusting that there has been a significant amount of learning out of all of this by the district staff. And just want to also add that saying no to the staff recommendation or tinkering with it really risks severe impacts for the Sea to Sky Nordics, for the Squamish athletes who will benefit from a $50,000 infusion of cash to support training for athletes from that community, and the existing residents of the Loggers East neighborhood as well, plus the potential future roadway into the back end of Valleycliff. And I recognize that this move is going to have a significant impact on our housing society. And we had high hopes that these units would come a lot sooner than ultimately we're now going to allow them. Because of that, I'm hyper aware of that situation for the housing society and open to doubling down on our commitment to find quick wins for our housing society.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson, would you like to speak as a seconder?
Yes, thank you. I'll just like to add a few comments. We've referred to what the district is or should be looking for and what is being delivered. It's been part of our conversation, and I think there's a few other things we might highlight. We have a hillside project in very challenging terrain. We are going to be building on the hillsides. We need to. We're going to be forced to in our topography. Mr. Mayor has referred to the challenges with the gas pipeline and the stormwater management infrastructure works, but there's other challenges that have been overcome successfully in this project and due to the teamwork, not least with our engineering department and others. We have a pioneering project in delivering net zero homes. We have a pioneering project, in fact, a first-class demonstration project in ethical dismantling of houses. Just one of those 5 houses is as much waste avoided in our landfill as 10 years of operation of Squamish Rebuild. Just one of those houses. With respect to the parking, it does come up in the report. I think that as we've addressed in an earlier discussion, there is really no practical spillover on-street parking available. There's little risk for side effects from the thing. We'll just, as we've mentioned before, I think collectively, the buyers will need to be aware for this development of the limitations on parking. I'll just finally note that the consideration that's been given by the Squamish Community Housing Society and Sea to Sky Nordics, I think it's part of a collaboration the district staff is also a part of to see this through. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
I've got an amendment. And I removed the staff recommendation from there we go. To amend item 2B, that the Finch Drive to Loggers Lane multi-use path be revised to provide a cash contribution towards construction of the Finch Drive and to Loggers Lane multi-use path in the amount of $462,000. And I'll speak to how I arrived at that number if it's seconded.
Is there a seconder for the amendment? Going once, going twice. Councillor Greenlaw, are you seconding that? Yeah. Councillor Hamilton, you'd like to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, thanks. The original CAC contribution in the amount of approximately $420,000 in Q1 of 2022. There's been, did the best I could to find the BCPI from Q1 2022 to now has been at least an increase of 10% in the value. So I've increased that CAC contribution value by 10%, giving me a $462,000 contribution to that multi-use path that would be in line with the original CAC contribution.
Other comments on this? Councillor Stoner?
Thank you, through the chair. I appreciate the intent of my colleague in moving this, but I won't be supporting the motion at this time. I would prefer that we provide either first and or second reading and provide some further direction if council doesn't feel comfortable with all of the components here, to allow staff and the proponent to discuss where there might be some give and take. So I won't support the amendment as proposed, but I may put forward another one following this.
Thank you. Other comments on the amendment? Go ahead, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Ford. I too won't be supporting the amendment. As I said in my original remarks, tinkering with the staff recommendation, I'm just not comfortable with that significant increase in that amount.
Thank you. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I also won't be, this is an interesting, this whole topic. I won't be supporting the amendment. I think we have, if anything in particular, this one will be worthwhile of some post-mortem and what can we learn? I think we asked, we had an agreement to go with in a particular direction. We asked for significant changes at significant cost. And I think that has been granted. And I think we have to wear some of that. And I think to the degree we are going to push and so on, and it's maybe where my colleague is going, I would like to see where there's some wiggle room in terms of the affordable units. And then having said all that, I have a risk concern, which I'll get to later anyways, which makes it all moot.
Thank you. Any other comments on the amendment? I won't be supporting the amendment, although I do appreciate the spirit, as others have mentioned. I think that what we have before us is very well considered and balances all the many complicated factors in this one. So I'm not supportive of changing that dollar value in this way as we're right now considering first, second, and third reading. So I don't think it's appropriate to change that dollar value by in this way. So I won't be supporting. So I'll call the question on the amendment. Just to be clear, this is just on the amendment. All in favor and opposed? Councillor French, Pettingill, Anderson, Stoner, and Mayor Herford opposed. Now we're back to the main motion. And Councillor Stoner, you're next on my speakers list. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am going to put forward a substantive amendment, and that is that we give the project first reading with the following items to be addressed prior to second reading. Bring the affordable units back to an earlier phase, and staff bring back a review of the costs and the plan for construction funding of the multi-use path. And I will speak to it if it's seconded.
You seconding that? Councillor Hamilton seconds. Go ahead.
Thank you, through the chair. I am putting this forward for council consideration because while I recognize just where we are at in the process, I also do feel like an additional 16 units is substantial. And I do think it is it is a good place to put some additional units. We have long talked about increasing the density through this development. That was part of the reason why we brought forward the LDA amendment back in 2023. The additional components of pushing the affordable housing units off feels like it's a little bit too far for me, in conjunction with the significant reduction in the multi-use path. Those were two elements of the original negotiations that I feel like were highly valued by our community when we talked about this development, both from the housing perspective, getting those units in the hands of a housing society was going to be key in terms of kind of enabling them to be as self-sufficient as possible. And that is something that this council has long articulated to the housing society, that we want them to be financially self-sustainable. This is a big part of that business model. And then the doubling down of not clearly understanding when we'll be able to deliver the multi-use path or how we're going to pay for that in the absence of losing some of the funding here. I'm just not comfortable passing that today. So I don't necessarily, I'm not overly concerned with the total reduction, but I do want to see some better clarity on how we plan on filling that gap if we're not going to be doing it with money from this development. I feel like, as I said, the 16 units are supportable, and the proposed shift for the Sea to Sky Nordics is also supportable to me. And so I'd just like a little bit of further discussion with staff on those other two items. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to go speak on this amendment?
I will leave it to the words of my council colleague. I agree with everything Councillor Stoner just said. I had some hesitation on the movement of the affordable housing units to delay their delivery. But if I was eased, my concerns there were eased when the Squamish Community Housing Society said they agreed to it. But yes, it obviously would be better to deliver those earlier as promised. That is valuable.
Thank you. Other comments on the amendment? Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. I won't be supporting the proposed amendment. I've already spoken to some of the values delivered by this project that we haven't otherwise highlighted in our discussion this evening, and I don't think they should be overlooked. These are challenging times for our housing development partners in the community. And I just think that we're already taking too long in our development approvals process, not least with this project. And I think we just have to move on, and that would be the best for all of us all around. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? I won't be supporting the amendment. What I've seen in the presentation today and throughout the conversation is justifiable in my mind, and I think that a delay of issuing first reading here causes further undue delay for this project. So I have enough information to support what was presented in the original, which is 3 readings at this time as presented and laid out in the package. So I won't be supporting the amendment. With that, I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All in favor? And opposed? So Councillor French, Anderson, Mayor Herford opposed. Motion carries. So now we're on to the main motion as amended, which is consideration of first reading with the sorry, I'm paraphrasing from the motion, but further information on the delivery of the path, including our funding, as well as what it would take to move the housing society units forward. Were those the two things that differed, Councillor Stoner? Okay, so on this motion as amended, any other comments? Councillor Penningill?
Yeah, it's a challenging one for me. Sort of just thinking about where I am on this. I supported the last resolution, because for me, if we were just dealing with this project as a whole, and I've said before, I support the project. My concern is the risk of the pipeline, which is right there. There's other things, if we understood the risk better, maybe it could be mitigated. I would need some pretty clear evidence. And, previously when I'd supported this, it was further away and I'd hoped we'd have a better understanding of the risk and maybe my concerns could be alleviated. We could find a way to deal with this, but that hasn't come to pass. And I just lose sleep, especially about zoning for some of our most vulnerable populations. These are affordable units being right there. I do have some comfort with this resolution in that, in my mind, it gives us a bit of time and maybe there's a window where we can understand the risk and maybe people can explain to me, maybe I'm being silly. I don't think I am. But then I could actually get to supporting this. I would say, though, regardless of which way my colleagues go, I think it is important to recognize that we, for better or for worse, we agreed to a path and we, it happens, changed our minds and asked for something different. And that does come with a cost that I think we have to bear. And so I think that deserves consideration in however anyone perceives. But for me, maybe I can support this because there's more time to understand that risk. But ultimately, until I'm confident that being that close to this massive pipeline is safe for people in especially affordable units, I'm going to have trouble ultimately supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I see this amendment as being substantially different from my original motion. I would rather we move ahead in this direction than vote it down. So I'll be voting in favor.
Thank you. Any other comments? I'm speaking sort of similar to my colleague, Councillor French. This isn't my preferred direction. However, voting against it doesn't get it closer to my preferred direction, which was to go further faster. So I'll be supporting the motion. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on now to some loan authorization or some financial matters, we'll say. Yeah, sorry, that was a pause for you to get ready, and the floor is yours when you're ready, so no problem.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the district. To assist with addressing me, my pronouns are she and her. I'm here today to present the 2025 loan authorizations and temporary borrowing bylaws. To assist with fielding Council's project-specific questions, Jesse Morwood, Manager of Capital Projects Engineering, is joining us online. For the community's background, a loan authorization bylaw is for the long-term borrowing for capital projects, and a temporary borrowing bylaw is for the short-term borrowing for capital projects. The goal of the presentation today is for Council to give first three readings to these bylaws. The community charter is the legislation that a municipality is required to follow when entering into borrowing. Under the community charter, a municipality must adopt a loan authorization bylaw prior to entering into long-term borrowing, which is subject to an electoral process. There are two options for electoral processes, which are assent voting, also referred to as a referendum, or an alternative approval process. Once a loan authorization bylaw is adopted, a temporary borrowing bylaw may be adopted up to the amount that is authorized under the loan authorization bylaw. To note, the maximum debt servicing a municipality can incur legislatively is 25% of revenues. The district's long-term financial planning guidelines and policies have limited this to 20%. For the community's background, capital project expenditures and funding are approved by council during the 5-year financial planning process. The next step is the administrative process of adopting the loan authorizations and temporary borrowing bylaws. The long-term borrowing that has not already been adopted through loan authorization bylaws are a fire truck for 1.8 million, flood protection upgrades for 2 million, Whitaker Slough Pump Station for 500,000, and Loggers East drainage pipe for 1.3 million. This slide represents if the full amount of the debt was issued for 20 years at an interest rate of 4.43%, which was the rate at the time of preparing the council report. The total annual debt servicing costs would be 450,000. The impact on the debt servicing limit is it will bring the district's debt servicing to 13.3%. If the full amount of the loan authorization bylaws that are funded by general taxation were borrowed at the stated rates with a 20-year term, the annual cost to the property owner per 100,000 of assessed value are equal to the following. The fire truck is 76 cents for residential owners and $2.05 for business owners. Flood protection upgrades are 83 cents for residential owners and 2.25 cents for business owners. Whitaker Slough Pump Station is 24 cents for residential owners and 64 cents for business owners. Loggers East Drainage Diversion is 53 cents for residential owners and $1.42 for business owners. I'll next speak to the temporary borrowing bylaws. It is best practice to adopt temporary borrowing bylaws in addition to loan authorization bylaws. This is due to borrowing under loan authorization can only be borrowed once the expenditures are incurred. Therefore, temporary borrowing provides short-term working capital to fund the projects until long-term borrowing can be issued. This slide represents if the district borrowed the full amount authorized through the temporary borrowing bylaw at an interest rate at the time the report was prepared, which is 3.32%. The total average monthly interest payment would be $15,000. Following first 3 readings of the loan authorization bylaws, the next steps are the loan authorization bylaws are forwarded to the inspector of municipalities for approval. Once approved by the inspector, an electoral process is undertaken. Staff are recommending the alternative approval process. After the alternative approval process, council adopts the bylaws. There is then a 30-day quashing period. In regards to public engagement, the engagement started with the development of the 2025 to 2029 financial plan, which included consultation with the community. Further, the project descriptions and details about the AAP will be shared widely and advertised throughout district communication channels to inform residents and business owners. It's staff recommendation that the loan authorization and temporary borrowing bylaws are given first 3 readings. This concludes the presentation, and I'll now turn it back to the chair.
Thank you very much. I saw some, can you go back to the, where that leaves our debt servicing? It wasn't a graphic, it was just like a percentage that you, maybe it was in the graphic, like where does that leave us? And could you, sorry, I just want to make sure we had that percentage correct.
Yes, through the chair. I thought it was on a slide, but I think I just spoke to it. So once these loan authorizations, should they be approved and passed by bylaw and through the AAP process, the district will be at 13.3%. When you take into account the full 2025 to 2029 financial plan, it's 17.6%, which was the amount reported during the financial planning process.
Okay. Thank you. It was that last sentence that we needed. So thank you. Okay, council, questions. Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. So just to further clarify, the 17.x%, that would be like at the end of 2029 when we've approved, like when we've gone through all of the 5-year financial plan and what's currently in it.
Through the chair, you are correct. So next year, 2026 to 2030 financial plan, if things have moved because new things may be coming online, it will change or could change.
Okay, Councillor Pettingill.
Do we have an approximate sense right now, just so I can understand magnitude, like 1% equates to roughly $2 million in borrowing, or do we know what that number is?
Through the chair, $10 million of borrowing is approximately what equals 1% in debt servicing. 10 million.
Okay. This is an important step. That's why things come to council, but this is a follow through on things that were in our financial plan. So, but if there are any questions specifically about the projects, we can entertain those, or any of the financial steps here. But otherwise, I think I'd be looking for to move these forward. Do these need to be can we do these all together? Okay, so we can do these all together, this step all together, which I don't see any other hands. So, okay, Councillor Stoner moves. I'll second that. Any comments? I'll just be brief. As I just said, this is an important step in the process of executing our financial plan, and I'm fully in support. And thank you for due diligence to get us to this point. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Then, do you have another piece? Okay, we'll move on to the next piece.
For community members that may have just joined us, my name is Rianne Susan. I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the district. The goal of the presentation today is that council give first 3 readings to the District of Squamish Revenue Anticipation Bylaw. For council and the community's background, the Community Charter of BC states that a council may, by bylaw, provide for the borrowing of money that may be necessary to meet current lawful expenditures. In order to do this, a bylaw referred to in the legislation as revenue anticipation must be adopted. The legislation recognizes that the main revenue sources for municipalities is property taxation, which is due for collection the first working day in July. In addition, the district has significant capital expenditures that can spike its average expenditures from time to time. Although the district has sufficient cash flow, it maintains a line of credit with its financial institution, Scotiabank, to ensure it mitigates the risk of short-term working capital deficits. The line of credit that is maintained is $2 million. It's staff recommendation that the revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw is given first 3 readings. This concludes the presentation. I'll now turn it back over to the chair.
Thank you. Any questions on this mechanism? Councillor French, set your hand.
I'm curious to know, have there ever been years where this borrowing has just not been required. We've never tapped into it because we've never needed it.
Through the chair, I can speak to the past 4.5 years since I've been with the district, and we have not utilized the line of credit. Prior to that, wouldn't be able to speak to.
Thank you. Perfect.
Councillor Hamilton is moving. Is there your second? Go ahead. Any comments?
Thank you. Seems perfectly reasonable and sensible thing to do.
Councillor French is a seconder, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Pettingill. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, it's, this is consistent, I believe, with our financial plan, so I will be supporting. I just want to sort of note, actually, I thought it was a small thing, but I appreciated the sort of reintroduction of who you are as you're representing this. I think for people who are joining at different places, that's actually a nice and helpful thing to do. So just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Speaking support of the motion, again, a sensible step of our executing our financial plan. So happy to support. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. So, Council, I'd like to suspend the order of the agenda and move to item 8AI next, which is to have all the finance items go together, just to stay together. I'll go back to our finance team.
For community members that may just be joining, my name is Rianne Sousa, and I'm the Director of Financial Operations at the district. The goal of the presentation today is for Council to pass resolutions to issue borrowing from the Municipal Finance Authority of BC at the fall issuance. For Council and the community's background, the Community Charter of BC states that a municipality cannot borrow under a loan authorization bylaw unless the financing is undertaken by the applicable regional district. In addition, a council resolution is required to initiate a request that the regional district proceed with the security issuance. Fire Hall number 2 was approved in the district financial plans to be funded through a combination of debt and reserves. To reduce the debt funding required, the district applied for a loan through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as the loan was coupled with a grant. The district was successful with its application and was awarded a $10 million loan with an associated $1.5 million grant. The term of the loan is 20 years and the annual interest rate is 4.53%. Now that Fire Hall number 2 is complete, to issue the debt, the district must follow the Municipal Finance Authority of BC's administrative process. Once the Fire Hall number 2 debt is issued, the district's debt servicing for all issued debt is 6%. To note, the legislated calculation for debt servicing also includes debt that is authorized but not yet issued. When this is taken into account, the district's overall debt servicing is estimated to be 13%, which remains within policy of 20%. Just for clarification of those who may have joined an earlier presentation, this doesn't include the loan authorizations that just received first 3 readings when calculating this debt servicing limit. In summary, there are 2 resolutions staff are recommending so that the $10 million of borrowing for Fire Hall number 2 can be issued at the Municipal Finance Authority of BC's 2025 fall issuance. Both resolutions are detailed in this slide. This concludes the presentation. I'll now turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. Council, any questions on this? This is where our previous motions are destined for a process like this in future, but go ahead.
Yeah, I should have asked this earlier, and I know I've asked previously and got an answer, but it's left my brain. The 6% of what is that of our the debt servicing reflects 6% of our annual tax requisition, give or take.
Through the chair, it's a percentage or the revenue from the previous taxation year, which is primarily property taxation and utilities. There are other amounts that factor into that, but that's the significant portion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on this? We have the two recommendations are before us if we're ready for that. Are you moving the recommendation?
Moving the recommendations, yeah.
Okay, I'll second that. Any comments?
Once again, sensible thing to do. And we're along the path already.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said, just foreshadowing if we're successful with the last round we're headed of approvals that we had, we'll see them back for this at a later date. So this is really the last step. And thank you for the due diligence to shepherd these two initiatives amongst everything else, but to this point. So happy to support. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. So my thought here is we go through, yeah, okay. I was just looking for an easy place to take a break, but we'll let's go through some adoptions. We got a little bit more in us, then we'll take a quick break and we'll finish off the meeting. So first up, under adoption, and as per our normal practice, there's no presentation with these, is the Gabriel Estates Neighborhood Plan. Can someone move adoption, please? Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor French. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Greenlaw opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Traffic Bylaw, number 2200-2012 Amendment Bylaw. It's Amendment 3156-2025. Moved by Councillor Hamilton, seconded by Mayor Herford. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have District of Squamish Fees and Charges Bylaw, number 2012-2007, and Amendment Bylaw number 3171-2025. What's that? Sorry? I seconded the last one, if that was the question. Okay, so now we're on to the fees and charges piece. Councillor Anderson moves, Councillor Hamilton seconds. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Oh, we can do those all together. Oh, sorry. Oh, nice try. Let's go with what's left here. I introduced it. Oh yeah, on the other page it says it all goes together. Someone like to move the remainder of this? It's, sorry, my brain's still in. I'm going to blame it on Eastern time. I'm 3 hours later in the night than this. So, Councillor Stoner, you're moving the remainder of these, second by Councillor Hamilton. Thank you, everybody, for that. Call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. I think, and we've done the finance item here. So we have a late agenda item. UBCM Excellence Awards. Is this a... Yeah, please.
Thank you. Through the mayor, staff have completed an application for the UBCM Excellence Awards around the accessibility plan and implementation of that plan at the district and in the community.
Amazing. Thank you. So does that require our endorsement of, or is that just a support?
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. Moved by Councillor Stoner, second by Councillor Hamilton. Any comments?
Woohoo!
Yeah. Speaking in support of the motion, I knowing the strength of the program, and then and what's got us here, I can only assume that this is a strong application for this award as well. So hopefully we're successful. It would be well deserved. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We don't have any correspondence action requested, but we do have some I'll put it under correspondence, I guess. Councillor Pettingill, you pulled the item from the consent agenda. It was a
Yeah, and thanks, and I appreciate the memo. The one piece that, and I apologize if I missed it, it wasn't clear to me. During the slide, it seemed to me from some of the correspondence that a number of faith organizations in particular either helped out or were eager to help out. And I don't need an answer tonight necessarily, but I'm just wondering or looking for clarity if or how in our process, when these sorts of things happen, that we can loop those folks in, or maybe we already do, so that, you know, we have a process that we follow. But do we have a way to sort of enable others who are looking to help and who do sometimes help?
if we have staff that's available to comment on this, that'd be
Hi, Pascal St. Louis, General Manager of Public Safety. I don't know if I'll have a full answer for you tonight. I do know that some of those conversations and engagement have happened with some of the faith-based organizations who did step up and provide some assistance during that landslide event. Squamish is, you know, generally challenged due to the lack of lodging facilities and vacancy in some of our hotels to provide services to those who are displaced during these long highway closures. And I know we were really lucky to have some of those faith-based organizations step up and help. And so I think that speaks to that social capital that does exist within community, but further engagements are required to see if there can be anything formalized. Thanks.
Thank you.
That I'd move to receive.
Well, just an additional question here. I'm assuming that was a question, not a seconding. Okay, I'll take that deal. Do you have anything to? Okay.
I think further to that, and thank you to my council colleague for pulling this. This also came up in one of the mayor's drop-ins that I attended in terms of the folks who manage the Sea to Sky Road Conditions Facebook page and some of the tour bus operators. And so one of the things that I was hoping to see in this memo was some reflection on how, kind of similar to what Councillor Pettingill said, the external folks who really do serve in perhaps unintentionally leadership and communication positions within our community can get folded into the loop in our more formal processes. So just something for staff to take back. I don't need to see it again, but I do think it's something that's important to think about those who do have really significant voices in spaces where we often don't have the same level of traction. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to my colleague for pulling this. I think it's nice to see that. I know this reflection happens on every incident, but it's nice to see that as well, and lots of lessons to learn here, and I think it's important that we endeavor to do that. Both of those points made by my colleagues around the faith-based groups, largely that stepped up to help at this time where there was capacity and interest to do so, I think is worth one, recognizing and celebrating, two, seeing if we can formalize or understand what those capacities are and how we would reach out to them to in a situation where it may be appropriate, where we could use those resources versus waiting for them to find out through whatever sources they found out where there was a problem and sort of self-organize. So I think there could be some room to there could be some capacity there, and they've already shown a great amount of capacity and a willingness to step up, and also on that communication piece, like we heard from Councillor Stoner. So, but overall, it was great, and I was here one day, and coming through the lobby, and a big gift basket was at the front counter, and I asked, where did that come from? Like, who's dropping us? And it was the fine folks from Lions Bay, the municipality, thanking for our support during the response. I thought it was a really nice gesture. I believe it was their CAO that dropped it off personally. So just as to show that our efforts as an organization and a community we're also really appreciated by these folks, and it's a small gesture, but there was so much going on and such a tragedy for the community. I think it really spoke volumes to how impactful our community's help was in that response. It's nice to see. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Any business arising from the minute? We didn't have any business arising from the minutes. Any notice of motion, council? Open question period. If anyone in the audience seeks clarification related to any agenda items, I'm seeing a no. Councillor staff announcements. Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. 3 items. I first wanted to let everybody know, and for those who weren't aware, the Squamish Off-Road Triathlon is happening on Saturday at Alice Lake. As has been the case for the last couple of years, the event is confined to Alice Lake and areas around, swimming in the lake, cycling off-road on trails above the lake, and then trail running in that same area where the cycling takes place. Always a great event. Number 2 item. I attended with Mayor Herford an Ottawa event, so I too have been dealing with time change. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference was held in the nation's capital, and I want to tell you this was well worth my time and expense to be there. I got a lot out of this conference, met some very interesting elected officials from across the country, had some intriguing and insightful conversations. It's amazing to me how a place like Portugal Cove, Newfoundland struggles with some of the very same things that we're dealing with. I want to highlight 2 sessions that I sat in on, and will encourage anybody who wants to grill me further on these or any of my other experiences to do so. And a session on misinformation and disinformation with both the mayor and I attended. We tried to split ourselves up so we weren't going to all the same sessions, but we both wanted to be at this one desperately, and it was well worth our time because my biggest takeaway is how we're handling communications here and how our communications team is functioning is basically state of the art. I believe that best practices in communications are happening right here in the District of Squamish, and that was confirmed out of my participation in that session. And even though I believe that, I did get some valuable insights out of that session. The number 2 thing that I want to share with was a panel discussion that included Trish Mondeo, who is the UBCM president. And the title of it was long and convoluted, but basically women in politics was the high level. I was one of only a few men in that room, and it's unfortunate that that was the case because I would have liked to have seen more of my side of the human equation in that room to understand the importance of having women and members of our LGBTQ community in elected positions. So those 2 sessions alone for me were worth all of the investment in time, money, and energy. Final item for me is I want to draw attention to item 17 on our agenda. That's under the council staff and in-camera announcements. This is a big deal, an exciting deal. And I'm just going to leave it at that because it's all there in the wording. And if there's anybody who is looking at our agenda and scratching their head about that information in item 17 and you're thinking maybe it is a big deal, yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Other announcements? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you. Through the chair, I want to cast back a few weeks was Public Works Week, and I just want to thank staff for a wonderful tour, both of the Public Works building that is under construction as well as the expansion of our wastewater treatment plant. It was always so great to see all the work that's going on there and making sure that our public works infrastructure is keeping pace with growth. And so thanks to staff for the tour. Last weekend was the kids' clothing, toy, and book swap, which was really great. There were over 700 attendees from what I understand, so a super well-attended event. And then this past weekend on Friday, we raised the Progressive Pride flag above Muni Hall. which was a phenomenal event. That was a great initial kickoff for Pride Month. And then 2 days later was the inaugural Pride Parade here in Squamish. And I can't tell you just what a phenomenal event it was. The parade itself was small but mighty, as an inaugural event sometimes is, but it ended up in a very fantastic, joyful celebration at Junction Park for the remainder of the day. I have to give hats off to Tori, I think in particular. There are 5-foot letters outside in our hallway now, or in our entranceway, that spell joy, which I understand that she built by hand. And that was the District of Squamish float in the parade. And just so much time and effort and energy went into making this fantastic celebration happen. And so many people showed up in order to support and celebrate and show allyship with our 2S LGBTQIA community. And I just want to speak to how important it is, given that both the history of Pride being really rooted in one of human rights and freedoms, how important it is to then reach out in acts of explicit demonstration of visibility and welcomeness to make sure that those folks know that it's not just in laws and regulations that they are supported, but it's really through acts of community and person to person, that we're here to support all those folks who call this community home. And that was really identified on Sunday. So thanks so much to Pride Squamish for all the effort that went into it, for all those from the District of Squamish who also helped make it happen, and looking forward to next year's event as well.
Thank you. Any other updates? Is that your hand, Councilor Brenningham?
Yeah, a couple things. I'll just go back to this last week, which was busy. We had regional district meetings, and I don't know if the chair of our Sea to Sky Regional Hospital District is in a place to add anything after I'm done. But of note, the development in Britannia South, Tiger Bay, that got adoption, which that's the surf park. And so people may be interested in that. And although the weather did not cooperate quite the way it did for Pride, there was a hospice walk on Saturday, and despite it was a little bit cool and rainy, it was still a fantastic gathering. And I just want to send a huge thanks to all the people who came out, who supported, who spoke to the importance of hospice, and there's some great performances. And so, we sort of bared the weather like Squamish can bear weather sometimes, and it was a fantastic day. And so thank you to everyone who does such important work for hospice. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, announcements? I was going to save my FCM till next week, but I'll touch on a little bit in my or next time. I'll touch on a little bit of my remarks here. Going back, which feels like an eternity ago, on the 22nd, it was Mayor for a Day. So I got to take some successful, it was a grade 3s and grade 5s around. And for those that don't know, Mayor for a Day is a contest that any elementary school can submit applications for, and the winners get spend some time here. Over my time in this seat, this gavel I have not used myself, but I think the most use has been on Mayor for a Day. You get to sit in the chair, get your photo taken. We had a tour of Municipal Hall, but the highlight is the other places. We went to see the fine folks at Bylaw and RCMP, and get a great tour of the facility. The young mayors for a day received lovely goodie bags at every stop, which they enjoyed, and it was great to see everything from the foot race in the back parking lot of the RCMP with the speed gun on them, to learning how to run the ladder of the fire truck up at the fire hall. So controlling the ladder around, and was really great to sort of see the minds expanding as to what the types of things we do here in local government. And that initiative is part of local government week as well. So it was great to be part of that. So I think it's one of, if not my favorite day of the year. My normal day does not involve visiting some of our most cherished facilities and then riding in a fire truck. They're delivered back to school in a fire truck to have a pizza party with their class, which is always a hit. So I think we created a couple little rock stars, but it's also great to see the interest, and both applications stood out from both successful mayors for a day stood out in their application because there was a lot of what we should do. As you can see, as likely with some of the applications didn't vary from some of the emails that we receive on ongoing basis. But the successful candidates for mayor for a day spoke about things that they're doing already when I do these things. And one other piece that stood out was a distinct voice for folks that need a distinct voice, and that is how do people new to our community access things, and are the fees appropriate, and like that caring for the others. So and both stood out specifically for those reasons, and that's largely why they were selected. So I also actually, I guess it was on the 21st, the day before that, did the tour at the Public Works facility. So that's looking at the Harris Slough stormwater, the pump house there, and the Public Works facility as well, and that's under construction. And it's really interesting for me as in this role as council, we see these things from a conceptual, sort of coming in a financial plan as a number, and then it turns into these conceptual drawings and things evolve. And it was really nice to see this starting to really come to starting to take shape. And so we actually got to be up on top of that mound that people may have seen, and things are really starting to take shape in the ground there, and will start looking like a facility in short order. And the wastewater treatment plant tour was great as well, and to see the new portion of our wastewater treatment system getting ready to be it's imminent to be put into service. It was great to see that, and also the pride that staff takes in their work and in their facilities was evident both in how they speak about it on the tours, but also in the condition that it's kept. The whole area is kept in. It's really really great to be able to spend some time there. Then what else do we have? I'll go into, sorry, skipping ahead here. Special business. Yeah. So then next was the essentially travel to FCM, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities in Ottawa. This is my second time attending, and it is so interesting. As Councillor French said, we are our own special. We all think that our communities are our own special snowflakes. When you get together with other communities, you start talking about, like, well, what are you guys working on? What's your crux? Oh, we have we have this challenge, that challenge. Oh, we've grappled with that. Oh, we're slightly further down the path than you. Oh, you're further down the path than we are. And having these conversations is just it's great. But there's also some victories in there. The misinformation session, I agree with Councillor French's assessment. I think we're well positioned, but it is a challenge that's so broad. I wasn't save for a session that is sort of an all hands session. That room was packed. People were standing around the outside. Unfortunately had the highest attendance, I think, of any of the sessions. And I actually ran to the back of the room to take a quick picture because I couldn't believe how full it was for something that sometimes I think that only the individual, like, we think, oh, this is only happening to us. So this is a challenge that's quite broad, and I think we're well positioned to address it. But yeah, it was quite eye-opening. I attended a session on put on sponsored by CUPE around the AI and just considerations and where things are going could go, and considerations of this technology, which I think is really important. We, as a species, we seem to adopt technology really quickly, but don't really look at the regulation of and those like think through the impacts. So it was a really interesting session there, and also went to a session on encampments, and I think they said encampment 4 times, and then they talked about successes in housing projects because that's how you address encampments. So it was really interesting. Just across the river from Ottawa, it wasn't a tour option. It's people's homes now, but they had a successful project where essentially small homes built in containers on, and there's a whole process around how they got there. So I'll circulate some news articles on some of these successes that were referenced there. But yeah, it was quite eye-opening as far as what the opportunities could be and what the barriers are to achieving those. So likely many other things. I'd like to thank Councillor Stoner as acting mayor for stepping into the acting mayor duties, and I know representing us all well, both in the raising of the flag and the parade. I was disappointed to miss the parade, but I did want to share that with things that are happening in the south of us. There's been a mandate where the flying of the pride flag or similar has been disallowed at American federal buildings, and the American embassy in Ottawa is a big, cold, imposing building, and some fine folks that work there lit that thing up like with a giant rainbow on top. I have a terrible photo of it on my phone, but it gave me some hope that there's good people everywhere and finding ways to express their opinions while working within the letters of the constraints that are presented to them. So I can share that with anyone if they want to see. It was a nice little glimmer of hope atop this imposing. Yeah. Anyways, I won't even get into that further. But it was it brightened my my evening when I saw that, and so I'm going to leave the rest of my comments there. Councillor Penigo.
Yeah, just one thing I think maybe my colleague forgot. I got a note from Councillor Stoner this morning that it was reminding me it was Go by Bike Week and encouraging us to sign up. I think actually most of us either walk or bike to council at least, and often our other jobs. I did sign up despite that, thinking maybe I would win and I would get a prize. And so I'm curious to know what my prize might be at the end of this. So I don't know if my colleague has an answer for that, but
bragging rights around this table, which are highly valued, I would suspect. But it is a team affair. So I did invite you all to join what I think I called Council Rides Bikes team, because there are other teams within the District of Squamish that I think have signed up. And so maybe if we really get our act together, then council could have bragging rights within the organization. Who knows?
All right, I'm not going to get into trash talk too much here. It's the end of the day. So, so with that, we don't have a motion to close. We already, Councillor French spoke to the slightly to the council staff in-camera announcement, which is here, which I do think is a big deal. And now I'm looking for a motion to terminate, which I believe is what Councillor Stoner is moving. Yes. Is there a seconder for the Councillor French seconds? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. And then, council, as you know, we are not done. We need to go back to our special meeting, which is in a closed phase. So we're gonna not recess. We're gonna reconvene. And how long do you need? Do you need 10 or 15 or 5? We're gonna go to close. Do we need the extra? We don't need the WebEx, do we?
We need Julie.
Yes, we do need the closed WebEx, please, and thank you, sir. Okay, let's take 10. We think we've earned a 10-minute break. We don't need to rush Russell at the end of his night either. So we'll be back.